All right, guys, welcome back to another video. Hope everyone had a great weekend, a great Easter, and we have a lot to talk about today. But before we do jump into it, make sure to hit that subscribe button if you'd like daily gaming content, if you enjoy what you see throughout this video. And also make sure to check out my Spotify. The link is in the description, as I do put this show out on Spotify, the audio version, a couple hours after it releases on YouTube. But let's start off here. Let's talk about Jim Ryan, because as we know, Jim Ryan is done. He is no longer the head of Sony Interactive Entertainment right now. It is Hiroki Totoki, who is, I believe, an interim replacement as they go out and try to find the official replacement for the head of Sony. But as Jim Ryan is leaving, he gave some final thoughts and some final words on his tenure at PlayStation and some interesting information, especially with his final say on the PlayStation 2 sales, which we will get there. But Jim Ryan first here talks about PlayStation. This is on the official PlayStation podcast to mark his retirement. And Ryan was asked about his thoughts on PlayStation's position in the games market going forward. As we know, they have a strong position on the console front. They are definitely looking at their numbers and realizing that they have to pivot and find other ways to make money and expand their games out to get in front of more people. Here's what Jim Ryan says. He says, "I'd say right now we're at the top of our game. We've been really clear and really consistent about what we stand for: great consoles, great console gaming experience, and great games. I would say that right now we're at the top of our game. PlayStation 5 is well on track to be our most successful console ever across multiple vectors. And I think the games and the gaming experiences you see on PlayStation 5, led by PlayStation Studios, are the best that we've ever seen." Now, it's interesting there because, as we know, when it does come to PlayStation, people love to mainly focus on how many consoles that they do sell. And if we go back to their last financial report, it does not seem like the PlayStation 5 is going to do as well as the PS4, at least as of right now, as they are missing some of their sales targets. Now, that's not to say that the PlayStation 5 isn't selling extremely well. It absolutely is. But the other thing here he mentions is mainly here is the multiple vectors, which is something I feel like at the beginning of this generation, people kind of wanted to ignore, about how the success of Xbox, of PlayStation, of these major gaming companies are measured in today's world. It's not just about the amount of console sales you have, it's also about the user engagement, the amount of monthly active users you have, and obviously the overall revenue you are making. They do say here, Ryan wasn't clear about what vectors he was referring to. While the PlayStation 5 would have to retain its sales strength for years in order to come close to being the company's best-selling machine, stats like player retention and engagement could be projected to eclipse the same metrics on the PlayStation 4. And in the company's financial results for the 3 months ended December 31st, 2023, Sony Gaming Division reported another record quarter in terms of revenue, with PS5 sales reaching 54.7 million, but lowered its sales forecast for the year after it fell behind in its lofty hardware target. They were trying to hit 25 million PS5s year ending March 2024. Then they had to reduce their forecasts because they realized they weren't going to be able to hit that. They only sold 8.2 million in the previous quarter, which would brought their total to 16.4 million. So they reduced their forecasts to 21 million versus 25 million. And obviously, to measure the metrics of success, it isn't only going to be based on how many consoles sell. They're going to be looking at many different numbers. And we always saw that argument of all that matters is console sales. All that matters is console sales. And PlayStation was always so great in those console sales, and themselves even right now know that they have to expand out where they're playing games, where they're selling their games, and the metrics they use to measure their success. Now, Jim Ryan does continue here and says the number of games we've published so far on PlayStation 5 at this point in the cycle way exceeds anything that we've ever done. And it says here, it's worth noting that it's unclear which number Ryan is referring to here, as Sony republished a large number of classic titles on both the PS4 and the PS5 as a part of its retro offering. So you think about the biggest games that they have released, well, Jim Ryan has been there. You have the God of War series, or at least on the PlayStation 5, God of War Ragnarok, Horizon Forbidden West, Spider-Man Miles Morales, and those are all coming out on PS4, PS5, as well as you have Spider-Man 2. All of these massive games that they did release so far for the PlayStation 5. And I would say the PlayStation 5 has had some good first-party games, but it's been very, very dry from a first-party perspective now, going on 2 years. There's nothing coming out this year. Only got one game last year. So 2025 has to be loaded for the PS5 for them to essentially go 2 years with one major first party studio game that does come out onto the PlayStation 5. And the thing is, PlayStation, Sony, they have such a good brand in terms of their marketing, in terms of people's top of mindness when they think about gaming. They can go 2 years without really releasing a big first party game, and they're still going to sell a ton of consoles. We already see the numbers. People still love to make the argument that first party exclusives sell consoles, and that just does not really apply to the PlayStation or to the Xbox Series X and S. I mean, we have the numbers in front of us in terms of the attachment rates of the amount of people that buy a PlayStation versus the amount of people that actually buy first party games. And the same thing with the Xbox side of things. Now, when you talk about Nintendo, that's a different story because they have an attachment rate of like 60% or something crazy along those lines. So clearly people do buy the Switch for their first party content mainly. But on the PlayStation side, like the highest they usually get is around like 15% or so. The majority of people are not buying PlayStations to play first party games. They're buying them to play third party games, play the Call of Duties, play the Fortnites, play where their friends are, play multiplayer, all that type of stuff. So it will be interesting to see what happens in 2025 and if it just skyrockets magically the amount of sales that the PS5 has had. But over these last 2 years, PS5 has still been selling very well, even without any major first party games, again, besides Spider-Man 2 that have been released. The other thing he talks about here is kind of interesting. That is the PS2. The PS2, as we know, is the best-selling console of all time. The Nintendo Switch is right on its heels. They're at about 140 million units, and the last recorded number for the PS2 that we had was 155 million units. So I'm thinking the Switch may end up surpassing the PS2 to become the best-selling console of all time. Unless this is the true number, this makes it a little bit harder here. As Jim Ryan does come out, he is asked specifically that the 2000s, about the 2000s generation, and what he associates with that with the 2000s. And he says, I would say 160 million, which is the number of PS2s that we sold. So he just bumped up the publicly well-known number here of 155 million PlayStation 2 units lifetime sales to 160 million unit lifetime sales. And maybe that is because he sees the Nintendo Switch here right on the heels of the PS2 to potentially become the best-selling console of all time. The PS2 is a phenomenal console, and I never really thought we would see the day where something would actually surpass it in terms of the overall sales, but we may actually see that here with the Nintendo Switch. And depending on which number, I guess, you want to use, whether that's the 155 or the 160. But it looks like as of right now, it's gotten a little bit tougher here for the Nintendo Switch to surpass the PlayStation 2. So that's Jim Ryan's kind of goodbye interview with the official PlayStation podcast. And it will be super, super interesting to see who ends up truly replacing him after Hiroki Totoki finds the official permanent replacement for PlayStation. Now let's jump over here. Let's talk about the Embracer Group. The Embracer Group, we've talked about a lot over the last year or so because they've just cut a lot of games, cut a lot of studios, cut a lot of employees. And it looks like they're done with their restructuring, as Embracer's CEO was, I guess, asked about acquisitions and things like that, saying it's too early to start buying studios again. The group confirmed completion of its restructuring this week, which resulted in over 1,300 job cuts. So this is what they say. And we just heard last week as well that they sold Gearbox to Take-Two, which was a major acquisition. But they say here, on Friday, the company confirmed the sale of Borderlands developer Gearbox to Take-Two in a deal worth $460 million. The deal marked the end of a 9-month money-saving operation, which saw the sale or closure of many studios, the cancellation of nearly 30 games. Crazy, and more than 1,300 job cuts. Surprisingly, on the day the restructuring was completed, CEO Wingfors was asked in an investor call whether Embracer was ready to start acquiring studios again, to which he replied, too early. Here's what he says. Looking to do more mergers and acquisition deals. I think it's way too early to start talking about restarting the M&A engines again. Now we are in the late phases of the consideration into the future of the group, and that's our highest focus and priority. How we set up ourselves and structure ourselves and utilize our assets we have within the group and have them work together, and how we leverage them be better working together, utilizing different functions. I think that's our focus right now, to increase profitability and cash flow generation by simply making better products and games. And that's the answer that actually, out of everything that has happened here with the Embracer Group, it's actually an answer I'm happy to hear. They need to start making games, just get good games out there for people to start playing. Because I honestly hope they don't go out and make any more mergers and acquisitions ever, based off how abysmal they have been with the mergers and acquisitions they previously made, and have to cancel 30 games. Like, that's insane. And we'll continue to see what the Embracer does. And maybe now that they have shrunken, maybe now that they actually have done a restructuring, there could be some good to come out of it, at least from the gamer's perspective, if they do start focusing on just making the highest quality games possible and making sure that people are going to want to play the stuff that they put out. Or they may go in the other direction and just only focus on that bottom dollar, and then try to put out these huge games as a service, fully microtransaction ridden games, and all of the stuff that a lot of people aren't going to actually be into, but they may end up making a lot of money off it because there will be people that spend on it. But we will see. Luckily, it does sound like we may not be hearing too much more here from job cuts and IPs being canceled and studios closed from the Embracer Group, at least for a while. Okay, let's talk Minecraft, because Minecraft is reportedly getting a native PlayStation 5 version. This here comes from PlayStation Game Size social media account that reveals games early by looking at the back end of the Sony console store. As of right now, Minecraft currently is only on the PlayStation 4. You can play it on PS5, but it's via backwards compatibility. The Xbox version right now has been updated to support 4K. But there's still not the official, I guess, optimized current version of Minecraft. We have seen some cool stuff with Minecraft that actually did show up on the game itself on Xbox, which was ray tracing, which I remember seeing when they showed off the examples of Minecraft with ray tracing, just how amazing that looked. And the fact that it really hasn't hit the console yet is kind of unfortunate, but it does say one feature that could potentially be supported in an optimized version of the game for current gen consoles is ray tracing, which Microsoft has been teasing since before the platform's launch in 2020. And they say here, last year, the Xbox Series X and S version of Minecraft appeared on various rating boards. So it looks like a PS5 native version is coming based off of what this account has found, which would mean more than likely an Xbox Series X and S native version is coming. So if you are a Minecraft fan, you may be getting now finally the current generation of consoles version of the game itself. I'm not really into Minecraft, so it doesn't really matter to me, but I've played a bit of it. It is a cool game. If they get like some cool native ray tracing there on the console version, it'd be nice to just see what it truly looks like on the console itself. Okay, let's talk about this, because we have the PS5, we have the Series X. The next console that's going to be releasing is going to be that PS5 Pro, from everything that we have seen. And we have another report here. We already got the leak of the specs of the PlayStation 5 Pro, and it doesn't really seem like it's going to be a massive boost over the PS5 after sitting back and really looking at it, mainly because of only that 10% CPU boost, which is, I think, going to hold these games from actually getting a nice crispy 60 frames per second, and at least at the higher resolution. So it's not going to be a massive jump. It may just stabilize these games with the lower FPS. We have some more information here from Insider Gaming saying exclusive PS5 Pro enhanced requirements details. It says, with the soon to be announced PS5 Pro expected to hit shelves later this year, Insider Gaming has learned of the developers' requirements that need to be met to have the PS5 Pro enhanced label. So this is what devs have to make sure their games have in order to actually throw that on the box itself. And here are the things, or here is the information on there. It says, internally, this is currently called the Trinity Enhanced label, which was the project name of the PlayStation 5 Pro. But for the sake of SEO, we'll be referring it to the PS5 Pro Enhanced. They say the enhanced label first made its introduction into the PlayStation ecosystem following the release of PlayStation 4 Pro, which meant the game utilized the Pro console's improved hardware to offer improved frame rates and resolutions. For the PS5 Pro, PlayStation games want to offer these features as PS5 Pro exclusive graphics modes that will have PSSR to upscale resolution to 4K. As we know, PSSR is like their DLSS solution. I personally believe that the PSSR, if anything, is going to be able to help these games really perform better. it's going to be that. To me, that is going to be the most important feature of the PS5 Pro. It's going to be this PSSR. It's not going to be that uptick in the GPU or in the CPU. The other thing that the games will need is a constant 60 frames per second and add or increase ray tracing effects. So essentially the PS5 Pro is going to be for this: 4K, constant 60 FPS, and ray tracing. That's what they are looking to have for games to have that PS5 Pro enhanced label on it. And we'll see if they can get that 4K constant 60 FPS with their games to be on the PlayStation 5 Pro. I am skeptical, but maybe that PSSR is such a magical software thing, that a magical tool, that they're going to be able to have some really, really good looking and playing games. It also says here, according to the document sent to Insider Gaming, this is possible because of 28% faster RAM. GPU is 67% larger than the standard console, or 45% faster. And then I don't know if they mentioned the CPU here, but as we've seen from the CPU in the leaked documents and the leaked specs for this console, 10% more, basically the exact same. It just can be overclocked to, I believe, 3.8 gigahertz versus 3.5, which it currently is at. So there you have it. We'll have to wait and see. We're not going to know. We always see this with consoles before they do come out. When we ever get some leaked information, the hype around the specs, the hype around this type of stuff, what's going to happen when it's out there and the games are running it, then we'll be able to see if it really truly does meet all of those requirements. Okay, now we're going to talk about a couple more things here. And this is kind of, I would say, the Xbox rumor section of today's video, because there's lots of rumors to talk about. A lot of them coming from Jez Corden, who had a lot of information on his stream in the Xbox 2 podcast. And we'll start off with this one, because this one's pretty interesting. It's an all hands meeting occurred apparently with Phil Spencer at Xbox. And Jez says they discussed what the future of Xbox looks like and discussed the rumors of going a third party. Phil said the decisions we take today are going about ensuring Xbox's future, not for years, but for decades to come, and Xbox will be stronger in the years and decades to come. And he specifically said that includes hardware. Now, this is kind of what Phil mentioned with his interview with Polygon. Basically, they're making these decisions for the betterment of the future of Xbox. He did specifically, I don't believe, mention that all that is including hardware, although we know hardware is coming. We know future generations of Xbox hardware is going to be announced and is going to be released based off of their business update that they gave after the whole putting games on PlayStation 5 thing. So that isn't surprising either. And I know a lot of people are on Phil. A lot of people got mad at Phil when all those rumors started coming out. But if you really sit back and think of what Xbox has been doing, they haven't strayed away from their strategy. And I think the decisions that they have been making will end up being the betterment of the Xbox ecosystem, the ability to play games everywhere, which you can currently do, but then they expand that out where it's not just Game Pass, it's your entire library. They add in the handheld. You have that cohesive ecosystem. They make it so you can potentially access other launchers on Xbox hardware. They open it up. I've always been somebody who is a fan of an open ecosystem, which is why I like Android more than Apple, which is why I've liked Xbox more than PlayStation, especially this generation. You're able to put like emulators and there's all these things you can do on Xbox that is just much harder to do on PlayStation. So I've always been a fan of open ecosystems, and that looks like what Xbox is kind of going for here, which I think will end up being very desirable for a broader range of people, not just Xbox fans, like PC people will probably be into this as well. It says here, also an Xbox higher up recently DM'd Jez saying there's a lot of things that we do wrong in Microsoft, and there's a lot of things I would change, and there's a lot of things that maybe I understand people being worried about, but there's one thing you shouldn't worry about, and that is the commitment to gaming. And that's great to hear, because I've never really questioned Xbox's commitment to gaming. The only time that I really questioned it, which I think most people question it, was the Xbox One announcement when they were trying to get TV into everything, and then they turned that around. But since the Xbox One X, I would say, was that real turning point, I've never questioned their commitment to video games. You can tell that they want to make Xbox a premier place to play video games. He says here, according to Jez, there has been a disruption in the brand, and part of that disruption is how costs have grown in recent years, which is no different than any other companies out there right now. He says everything has gotten more expensive, and that's why they put Sea of Thieves on the PlayStation. Rare has no cash flow apart from Sea of Thieves, and with expenses going up, especially in the UK, adding another revenue stream to Sea of Thieves is crucial. And Microsoft wants each division to stand on its own 2 feet. Every team needs to stand on their own 2 feet eventually. So that is some interesting stuff, some interesting information here. I mean, I'm not surprised by any of this. Obviously, they're looking out for the best interest of Xbox, and I don't think that they are trying to destroy gaming or anything like that. They are looking to make Xbox a premier place to play games, but the whole costs have shot up in this industry, and we're seeing it have rippling effects across Xbox, across PlayStation, across all of these studios. Embracer, all of these studios have had to close or shut down a little bit. Across all of these studios have had to pull back a bit with firing and laying off people, canceling IPs, and just becoming less risk-based with the content that they do put out. So that was one of the rumors. The next one here, this comes via Tom Warren, who was actually in the chat on the Xbox 2 podcast writing about the Xbox Series X digital, the white edition that we saw last week that got leaked. And he says there are some minor changes on the motherboard and the heatsink, and the new heatsink model and new Nexus card model with the heatsink size are the same but redesigned. So there are going to be slight hardware changes within that Series X digital, the white version, but nothing that's going to bring any more power for anybody who is interested in picking up that console. It really will depend on the price. My interest right now isn't there for it, but if it comes out at a good price, maybe it's eventually something that replaces my Xbox Series S that I have right now. Next up, we have here that Jez Corden heard that Matt Booty acknowledged that the multiple platform strategy has stressed but not damaged the brand. And he says, is paraphrasing, and it's not a direct source, but something that he's heard secondhand. And I mean, via social media, I would say definitely it has stressed the brand. Maybe you heard it because there are some people who have really just were turned off by these moves, and you can see lots of infighting on social media. But overall, it'll be interesting to see how it affected people's image of Xbox outside of social media. My guess is most people probably don't care that much. Most people probably aren't even paying that much attention to it overall. So, well, I wonder how much it truly has affected or stressed the Xbox brand. And then finally, we have this here. Jez Corden saying that he heard that a new Xbox controller will have a dedicated switch on it that will force it into Bluetooth mode or Xbox mode. And he says this here on stream. So they already have that mode, that switching that they have on the Xbox consoles, the little pair button on top. If you double tap it, it does switch between the devices that you are on. But I guess here it will be like a hard button, maybe a switch up and down, so you can get it into the Xbox connectivity versus have it on the Bluetooth connectivity if you're on your PC or something. I mean, I'm looking forward to that redesign of the controller with some additional features. I'm sure that thing is going to be coming out eventually, and we'll see the type of stuff they add in there. I am hoping they add the haptics. Don't really care for those triggers that are on the PlayStation 5. I actually like the current triggers that are on the Xbox controller, so I hope they don't just copy the PS5 triggers. That would kind of turn me off a bit because I kind of just turn those off when I'm playing my PS5, but we'll see what happens here. I'm going to end the video there, guys. Let me know your thoughts on all this. If you did enjoy this video, hit that thumbs up. If you are new here, hit that subscribe, and I will catch you guys in the next video.